Hello and welcome back to Face to Face. My name is Ryan Nally and I'll be filling in for Zach tonight. Tonight we will explore the topic of abortion and the debate surrounding it. I'm joined by Megan Smith, president of Purdue Boilermakers for Life. I'm also joined by Jaime Hough. So Jaime, I want to start with you. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm a graduate student in American Studies here at Purdue, and my dissertation is on the rhetoric of virginity in the contemporary United States, so basically from 1945 to the present. I'm on fellowship this year, but for my first 3 years at Purdue, I had the pleasure of teaching in the Women's Gender and Sexuality Studies program.
Okay, so now you started in Washington or Washington State as an undergrad?
Yes, I'm originally from Washington State, so I did my undergrad education there, and then have moved progressively further east with each degree.
Oh, cool. And so with Megan, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I am an undergraduate in speech language hearing sciences, and as you said, I am the president of Boilermakers for Life, which is the pro-life club on campus. So when I'm not doing that, I'm studying for hopefully graduate school.
Oh, perfect. So what are your aspirations past graduation?
Well, going to grad school, and then I'd really like to work in a hospital setting, perhaps in the NICU, with working with newborn babies who have swallowing difficulties.
All right. Perfect. So let's just dive right into this, okay? How shall we? So I think what we should begin is, so we're talking about abortion. For both of you, what does that mean? Is abortion, or basically for like a fetus inside the woman, when do you say that there's life there? Let's start with you, Megan.
Sure. I'm glad you started with this question because that's really the focal point of the issue of abortion. It's when does life begin? Because if the fetus is not human, if it's not alive, then really the pro-life position really has no argument. We don't have a right to tell people what to do with their bodies. But if the fetus is in fact alive, then really no justification for abortion would be adequate. So for me, based on scientific evidence, I present the idea that life begins at fertilization, and I back that up with our evidence from embryology textbooks as well as the law of biogenesis, which I don't know if you're familiar with the law of biogenesis, but essentially it just states that living things reproduce after living things. So dogs have dogs, cats have cats, humans have humans. So we know that at fertilization we have a whole distinct living human being.
Okay. Same question to you.
Yeah.
Do you believe that life begins at conception?
So I'm also really glad that you started with this question. Okay. So personally, I don't believe that life starts with conception. And what I can say from a historical standpoint in terms of documents that we have from a long oral and written history of midwifery across the world, abortion has always been a fairly common practice for women, and the kind of cutoff line of when it's been no longer considered appropriate to abort a fetus is at what's called quickening. So when you can start to feel the baby move, that is when midwives across the globe would really say, okay, this is a living, independent being now, so it's no longer appropriate to abort it. But I think what's really the most important about this question to me is this is one of those things where I am never going to convince Megan that life doesn't start at fertilization, and she's probably never going to convince me that it does. Now, we may change our minds. I've certainly, I used to actually agree with Megan, and I've changed my position for a variety of reasons that we don't have time for today. But I think what this question highlights is we don't have to agree on when life starts to talk about healthy options for women and children, which is one of the reasons I was so excited to be here, is because I really want to talk about abortion in the broader framework of reproductive justice. So, even though we disagree with this question, I think that Megan and I probably will find tonight we have a lot of common ground when it comes to creating broader healthy options for women and children.
Why don't you elaborate a little bit on specifically that, and we'll kind of dive into that.
Sure, on reproductive justice?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so the idea of reproductive justice is, what does it mean to bring life into the world, right? So Sister Joan Chittister said that if you want a child born but not a child fed and a child educated, then you are pro-birth and not pro-life. So reproductive justice is the idea that we want to make sure that women have everything they need to raise healthy children, and not just women, but families, right? So things that are relevant to reproductive justice are things like equal pay, so that when a woman does choose to bring a child into the world, she has funds to support that child. Access to healthy food, so we have a vast portion of the United States, say, living in food deserts, where they only have access to processed food, and we know that that relates to childhood obesity and also early onset type 2 diabetes and all sorts of things that compromise health for families and communities. So reproductive justice takes a broader systemic framework and shifts the question away from abortion per se, and what are the things that we as a society can do to ensure that women don't have to think about abortion because they have the economic resources, they have access to great housing, to great food, to great education for their children, to bring children into a world when they're ready, and to make sure that that child has a life rather than just a birth.
It's interesting because I've never really heard about that topic. And so what we're going to do, though, we're going to take a break, but I would love to dive more into that, and I'm sure you have some things to add. So we'll be right back after these messages.
In a world that looks astonishingly like West Lafayette, Indiana, a place where wind-driven winter snow and sunny warmth can peacefully coexist, sometimes within mere minutes of each other. A group of remarkably gifted students from a wide range of disciplines and backgrounds are using their various powers, along with the opportunities they've been granted, to solve the challenges of tomorrow. I see smart people. This spring, you can do your part to boiler up and pay it forward. Starring Big Ten Player of the Year, Caleb Swanigan, one of Fortune's 50 greatest leaders in the world, Mitch Daniels, Oscar winners Kayleen Kramer and Norman Joseph, NFL MVP Drew Brees, and a cast of thousands, including you.
This April 26th will no longer be known as just another day, but as the day the Purdue community declared in one voice. We will not rest on our laurels. We will boiler up like never before. We will all work together. And on April 26th, we will celebrate our Purdue Day of Giving.
Hi, welcome back. You just watched the Purdue Day of Giving trailer, and so if you'd like to see more programming like this, please donate to the Brian Lamb School of Communication and mention that it's for the Digital Media Production Center. So we're here with Megan Smith and Jaime Hough, and so we were just talking about reproductive justice. And so I'd like to basically kind of encapsulate what we were talking about. So reproductive justice means that you want to influence policy so that a woman never has to make the choice to have an abortion, essentially.
That's right. So shifting the debate away from the specific act of abortion to making sure that there are systemic policies in place so that every woman gets pregnant when she is ready to bring a child into the world.
What do you, I'm sure you heard of reproductive justice. What do you think about that?
So I think that Jaime does bring up a lot of really great points as far as making sure that women are supported in today's society. However, I do think that the real key issue to talk about is actually abortion. So when we're talking about these things, if abortion is not the intentional killing of a preborn child, then it doesn't really matter if we restrict abortions or how many abortions a person has, because it's no different than having a tooth removed at the dentist. But But if it in fact is the killing of an intentional human being, as science suggests, then there's just no adequate explanation. And we were talking, I remember earlier you mentioned quickening with midwives, and I think that's a really good point to bring up, because with our current technology, we can actually see into the womb with ultrasounds and things like that, versus a lot of times with midwives, the quickening was the first sign of life. And so if we err on the side of caution with the first signs of life, we know at fertilization that we have a distinct human being. So it's not okay to kill that individual.
Mm-hmm. So, and your response is more like, this is killing a human being, so either way, it's, abortion should not exist.
Essentially, my position is that, and I think this is one we can agree on, is that it's wrong to intentionally kill an innocent human being. And then to follow that, abortion kills an innocent human being. So then therefore, abortion isn't immoral. So that's really the position that I take on talking about these things. And of course, we can agree that we need to be supporting women, and there's a lot of great resources out there that do that. And I think there's a lot of room for improvement in that area. I'm sure we can agree on that as well. But when it comes to the issue of abortion, what we need to be talking about is it's legal in our country right now, and it's happening nearly 3,000 times every single day legally. So if it is wrong, we shouldn't be redirecting the conversation to see how can we limit. We should be limit it. We should be seeking to completely abolish it.
So this is for both of you as well. Why do you think, so Roe versus Wade happened, it's well over 50 years now, but why is there a debate still surrounding abortion, and why do we need this debate? Can we start with you, Jaime?
Well, we can. So that's a really great question with a really complex answer. So the first thing that I would say is I'm not sure that we do still need this debate because just not sure. I don't know who it helps to have this debate, honestly. So, to go back to Megan's point, abortion is a legal procedure, and women get abortions every day. But, before Roe v. Wade, before it was legal, women still got abortions every day. It's just that those abortions were not done by licensed medical practitioners. They were often actually run by the mob. The mob made a lot of money on abortions, particularly on the East Coast before Roe versus Wade. It was routine, if you look at the stories of women who talk about their abortions before Roe v. Wade, for the practitioners of abortion to sexually assault their clients because the client couldn't go to the cops after. So it was also common to extort them to say, okay, it'll cost X amount of money, and then to get through the procedure and have it doubled or nothing. So for me, the debate is not about will women do it? It's will women do it safely and humanely, or will they do it and put their lives in danger? Right? And this is the unfortunate part about, I think, focusing on the abortion debate rather than reproductive justice more broadly, is at a certain point, if you focus solely on abortion, you're pitting the rights of the fetus against the rights of the woman. And that's not what anyone wants. I know that that's not what Megan wants. We want to have a robust welfare in place for both women and children.
Okay. I'm going to toss this over to you.
Yeah, thank you. You had a lot of great points that I want to address. So the first thing that I did want to actually talk about is talking about illegal abortions that happen, and you threw out a couple statistics that I'm not really sure where you got, but I actually know from, I brought some notes with me today, but the American Journal of Public Health actually states that 90% of abortions that were performed illegally before Roe v. Wade were actually performed by licensed physicians. So they weren't being performed by people who didn't have their medical license. They weren't being performed by in back alleys. In fact, they were being performed in doctors' offices by practicing in good standing doctors. And then secondly, on top of talking about the whole idea of like back alley abortions, I know that's not actually a label that you called it, but often when we talk about them, that's the label it's given, and it's really just rhetoric that's not accurate. They weren't happening in back alleys. They were being performed, like I said, by licensed, in good standing doctors. And then secondly, the morality of abortion is not actually based on if it's legal or not, right? There's been things in our past, in our own country, that have been legal, that have been atrocious, that just because something's legal doesn't mean it's okay. And we don't base laws on if people will be harmed in the process, right? We could say bank robbery, for example, is would we ever make bank robbery legal so that a bank robber wouldn't cut his foot on glass or get shot by the police? No, that's arbitrary. We would never say that, because laws aren't put in place, laws are put in place to protect humans. And so that's why, back to your very original first question, that's why I would argue that this argument, this whole abortion debate, really is focused on that one central question, which is the preborn a human being? And that question is very clearly answered by science in our today's technology. We know, based on evidence through embryology textbooks, through the law of biogenesis, through countless, even a lot of the pro-choice side, individuals like David Boonin, and I believe I said Peter Singer also admits that at the beginning, at fertilization, that the human zygote is in fact human. So to take the position of that at fertilization it's not a human being, of course you're entitled to that position, but you're not arguing with me, you'd be arguing with science.
Okay. Well, we're going to take.
I just want to hop in and say, just because someone is a licensed medical practitioner doesn't mean they do all of their services in a safe medical clinic. So a lot of abortions before Roe v. Wade did happen in mob-owned hotel rooms. And we know this from the testimony of women during that time. So just because it's practiced by a licensed medical practitioner, that doesn't mean that it's happening in a safe medical way that it is after Roe v. Wade.
Well, and of course I would add to that it's never done in a safe way, because the fetus at the end of the procedure has been brutally dismembered. So a child always dies at the end of abortion, so an abortion is never safe for at least one of the parties involved. And women die from abortions today too. There was a woman back, I believe, in 2009. I don't have her name on the top of my hand, but she died of a legal abortion. So if we're talking about keeping things legal just to keep people safe, first of all, that implies that the preborn are not in fact human, and then secondly, it implies that it is just because a woman would be safe having the procedure that it would be in fact moral for her to have that procedure.
Okay, well ladies, we're going to come right back. We're going to have a commercial. My producers are yelling at me, so we have to do it. So we'll be right back after these messages. Stay with us.
Why would you bully me?
Why would you bully me?
Why would you bully me?
Because it makes you feel cool? Because I'm different?
Do I touch a nerve?
Does making me feel bad make you feel good?
Why?
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 Bullying hurts. Bullying abuses. Bullying kills. Why would you bully me?
I'm your mediator.
I'm really glad we can be adults about this.
One thing you'll see in every society in the globe is music. It's part of what it means to be a human being. You watch these kids, you can just sense this incredible joy and feeling of accomplishment. You just can't imagine that school was at one time silent without any music.
When I sing, it makes me feel happy. Every trouble I have, it just brushes away.
Music lets me express myself.
My life would be really boring without music.
It's like, wow, we did that?
In New York City, more than half the schools don't have music at all. And I think this is one of the great tragedies in the past decade, is that it's been going down. Now we're starting to go up. And thanks to education through music, they're really reversing this. And it's the most important thing we could be doing in education right now, is making sure that there's music in these schools. That it costs just $150 per kid for a whole year is like the best money one could ever spend. It's changing these kids' lives and making them better people. It's going to make our city a better place.
Hi, and welcome back. Well, I'm going to start off first by mentioning Megan's event that's coming up with the Boilermakers for Life, and it is Monday, April 24th at 7 p.m. It is a campus debate entitled, "Is Abortion a Moral Injustice?" So why don't you speak a bit about that?
Yes, I'm super excited. We're going to be having our very own Dr. Sanders, like you said. He is a professor here at Purdue, and then Mr. Dreyer will be representing the pro-life position. And I think this is such an important issue for us to talk about because one of our positions is correct, and so the important thing is that we talk about it, we understand each other's positions, and let the people decide.
Sounds good. I've actually been, there was a debate about 2 years ago that Purdue had, and I remember it was very interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
So I want to touch on a little bit. So, and this I think is for you mostly. If abortions are made illegal, should there be exceptions, or should it be a bar none, this is what it is type of situation?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think the first thing that we need to define is what are we talking about when we say what an abortion is. And so I would, for our conversation at least, I would just say it's the foreseen and intentional killing of a preborn human. So with that in mind, I would say that there should not be any exceptions to the foreseen and intentional killing of an innocent preborn child.
Do you have any response to that? If abortions were made illegal, do you think there should be exceptions to that? I'm sure you do. But
Well, I absolutely think that there should be exceptions to that. I think, you know, forcing a victim of rape or incest to carry that child to term is, I think that that is morally wrong. And, you know, I think I'm representing the pro-choice side, and all that really means is that I believe that women should have the right to choose, right? So I am not an advocate for or against abortion. I just believe that individual women should have the right to choose what they think is best for them.
Yeah. I remember there's been kind of a topic, especially going with the pro-choice movement, that they say they can be both pro-life and pro-choice, meaning that they support the life of a child and do not want that child to, or the mom or mother to go through an abortion, but still believe that they should have that choice if the circumstances present itself. Do you agree with that?
I haven't heard that particular formulation before, but I don't think that I disagree with it. You know, I think that in some ways to be pro-choice is to be pro-life in a very comprehensive manner. So not just pro-life in terms of against abortion, but pro-life in terms of against the needless wasting of lives due to the military-industrial complex. Pro-life in terms of against the self-mutilation that prisoners in solitary confinement inflict on themselves. I think those stances are pro-life too. And a lot of pro-choice people I know hold those stances. So I don't think they're mutually exclusive.
All right. I want to kind of go a little bit, this is a bit of a stretch, but so reproductive justice, you were talking about that as more of a preventative measure. And so what I'm going to pose is if there was a, so if abortion was illegal, and let's say a mother needed that abortion because of some type of financial circumstance or something, do you believe that there should be policies in place for protecting the child past pregnancy?
So that's a great question. And I will actually answer it with a little hypothetical situation if you don't mind.
Okay.
But the idea of financial burdens that women face today are, it's a very real situation. I think we can agree that a lot of women are in very difficult situations when they find out they're pregnant. A lot of times they feel unsupported and they don't really feel like they have a lot of places to turn. So that's a very real situation that women in our country face every single day. And I think, so for jumping to my hypothetical situation here, if we were to say a woman was in a difficult financial situation, but instead of being pregnant, she had a 2-year-old daughter. And let's say during this time of financial struggles, she loses her job. Maybe she doesn't have money that she can pay for her rent. She's in a really hard situation where, again, a very real situation that people in our country face today. Would we ever say to that woman that it would be okay for her to drown her 2-year-old in the bathtub? I don't think I need you guys to answer it. Of course not. I mean, none of us here would say, of course. That's absolutely not. We would say, let's provide that woman resources, let's figure out a solution. And even if we couldn't personally provide a solution, we would never condemn, or we would never accept the idea of her drowning her 2-year-old in the bathtub. So in the same regard, I would then apply that to abortion. If we know that abortion kills an innocent human being, and if it is morally wrong to kill the innocent human being who's a 2-year-old girl, there's no difference between killing the 2-year-old girl and dismembering the preborn human.
Any thoughts?
Well, I think so. Another hypothetical.
Sure.
You know, if
I'm enjoying the hypothetical.
If I had a 2-year-old girl and I had a petri dish, a fertilized cell, a zygote, and I was going to drop one of these things, right, and it was going to break the petri dish or break the arm of the 2-year-old, which one should I drop? So, I mean, you know, in your example, they're the same, but most people intuitively know, drop the petri dish, take care of the 2-year-old, right? So, you know, a lot of scientists are actually, just because cells are alive does not mean that there is a sentient being that is alive, right? So a lot of scientists aren't 100% on board with the idea that a fertilized cell is a human life at that point. And so, but again, I think the most important thing is that's a deeply held value-based belief, and I'm not going to convince Megan, and Megan's not going to convince me. And when it comes to viewers, we're not going to change the preconceived notions of where life starts for anyone today. But you know, I think the most important thing is to, again, make sure that women are never put in the situation where they have to choose an abortion, right? And ways of doing that are making sure that all women have access to OBGYNs and can get prescriptions for birth control or have access to other contraceptives so that they don't have to make that choice, right? So that they don't find out they're pregnant when it's financially disadvantageous for them to be so. And so I think that's, you know, where this conversation about reproductive justice can lend some clarity.
I think it's very interesting that we can have these different views and pull information from different areas and to support our opinions, and it's kind of cool that we're having these conversations. And the reason I like that is it helps our viewers know, you know, to basically affirm their beliefs, and not just that, but understand what the other side's coming by, and basically creating some type of empathy, if you will.
Can I actually respond to some things?
Yeah, thank you. Yes, totally.
So a couple of things. So one, I do think that people do change their minds on this issue all the time. In fact, at the beginning of the conversation, you said that at one time you considered yourself more pro-life, and now you consider yourself pro-choice. So I think that there is a lot of room for people changing their mind on this issue. And just because people have differing views, I think we should be open to the idea of changing our minds to really seek truth, because there's been times in our country when I mean, the example of slavery, of when we literally viewed people as 3/5 of a person, like absolutely ridiculous, just because of the color of their skin. Like, it's incomprehensible, right? And we view someone as less than a person just because of an arbitrary trait, such as the color of their skin. And today, there are differences that exist between a preborn human and a toddler. I completely agree, and they do exist, but they don't matter. That's my point. There are really only 4 differences between the zygote that you once were and the person you are today, and that's your size. So Jamie and I are I'm much taller than Jamie, but that does not make me more of a person than you. Level of development is another one, right? So the zygote is it's less developed than me, just like a toddler is less developed than me, but that doesn't make me more valuable than the toddler. And I actually have 2 more really quick, and that's environment and then degree of dependency. So again, those differences exist, but they don't make us less valuable.
So that's all the time we have. Man, we're 10 seconds out. So I just want to thank you, Jamie, and thank you, Megan.
Thank you.
And so that is all we have time for on Face to Face. Join us later tonight at 8 o'clock.